So I know some of you guys have heard about Papa John's and its CEO and how he's complaining about Obamacare and the cost it's going to add to provide health care to his full-time employees. The news has come out that it's going to be about 14 cents a pizza, which is next to nothing. Here's another guy. His name is Zane Tankel. He owns like 40 Applebees up in the New York area, and here's an interview with him and what he has to say about Obamacare and the effect it's going to have on his business.
Now, before the election, our next guest said he might have to move some of his employees from full-time to part-time if President Obama got re-elected. What's he going to do? Joining us now is Zane Tankel, Apple Metro Chairman and CEO. He runs, I think, was it 42 Applebee's franchises? Is that correct?
40.
40, sorry. All right, before the election you said, might have to do this, might have to make my full-time people part-time people. All right, we've had the election, the president won, what are you going to do?
We're going to evaluate it. We're going to continue to look at it. We're going to see. Look, business is relatively simple. More money has to come in than goes out, whatever business you're in. We're in a fragile business time, fragile environment. Just adding to overhead doesn't add to GDP, doesn't put cash in the system, doesn't do anything.
So in each Applebee's, how many employees have you got, roughly?
It varies from, I'd say, a minimum of 80 to as many here in Manhattan as 300.
Whoa. So let's take the big one. In Manhattan, 300 employees. You are supposed to give them health care insurance.
We are.
If you don't, then you face $600,000 a year in fines.
That's correct.
Now, does that take away all your profitability or a big chunk of it, or what does it do to you?
Sure it does. I mean, look, there's three ways it has to come back. It's real simple. More efficiencies, reduce overhead, or raise prices. Let's look at each. In this environment, you can't raise prices, particularly in our space. It's not possible. Efficiencies, hopefully we've got all our efficiencies. We've just faced 3 terrible years in the environment and the economy. We've been enforcing and putting more and more in every year. So then it's cut back on overhead. And
so you couldn't, supposing you did provide health insurance, it has to be insurance approved of by the federal government, I got that.
That is correct.
Roughly how much? For a restaurant with 300 people, roughly how much?
We've calculated it will be some millions of dollars across our system, some millions. So what does that say? That says we won't build more restaurants, we won't hire more people. It'll exactly the opposite effect of what the president...
I love this. First he starts off by saying, yeah, the last few years have been terrible. It's not the 20 to 30% a year cash cow that I thought it was going to be when I bought it in the early 90s when the brand was still relevant. Yeah, and then he resorts to this kind of scare tactic like, oh, my brand sucks now, and we haven't done well in the recession, so I'm not going to hire anybody. I'm not going to open any new stores. I'm not going to expand my brand. And let's be real, who's going to be sad if a new Applebee's doesn't open down the street? Nobody cares about Applebee's anymore.
Still under pressure to move to a more part-time workforce as other restaurants are doing because of Obamacare?
Well, the model's been set. I don't want to, I'm sure all our people are watching this right now, so I don't want to make any commitments one way or another. I want to simply say we're looking at it, we're evaluating it. If it's possible to do without cutting people back, I'm delighted to do it. But that also rolls back expansion. It rolls back hiring more people. And in a best case scenario, we only shrink the labor force minimally.
Any way you slice it, any way you slice it, if you offer insurance, if you don't offer insurance and pay the fine, your overhead's gone up. No way around it.
You just took something from the bottom line, which we use for ideally expansion, hiring, extending, remodeling restaurants. We're building a green restaurant right now. It's going to open in 3 weeks on 117th Street in Harlem, which will be a model for the industry. Gather rainwater, compost garbage. It'll cost us in excess of $4 million. Last one we built for the next 4 years.
All right. See, Zane, this is how I know your motivations are political and not business related. if this retrofitting green marketing tactic works and your sales grow by 5 to 6% this year, and you don't do that to the other stores with the resources you have, then you're just an idiot, because your brand has only been growing by like 2 to 3% a year over the last 5 years or so. So basically, you're an extinct brand, and you're trying to do something, and you have to do something to stay alive.
Is this the most challenging time you've ever seen?
It is. It is. And
because of the regulations?
All the regulations, DOL. And what concerns me, frankly, David, is I was watching the news last night, and I heard the president of the United Steelworkers Union, and it sounded like he just invaded Benghazi and won. It was the ground game that won, and we showed that money can't do it, and it was truly a declaration of war. I had and have a lot of hope for the president, as you do. Slimmer, a little more than Slimmer, because he's all of our presidents today.
Right.
But what's his obligation to his constituency, who did that ground game, declared that war, and won? And these guys
You think they'll be even further to the left than he was the first term?
I think he's got to sit down, and he's got to get in a closet, a dark closet. He's got to use the White House to make friends, forget about dinner with Malia and his wife and all the kids, invite the various parties over to the White House, use that asset, as previous presidents have done, have them for dinner, instead of quitting and going to dinner with the family. He's the President of the United States.
Zane Tankel, you always tell it how you see it, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much for being with us.
You're very welcome.